Hello and welcome my friends to The Flying Kick. I am Savino and today I bring you the review of Brok the InvestiGator, a game that mixes two of the oldest genres in history, point and click and beaten ups. But does this mix make sense when you play, or is it a mash of things that should be kept separated? Well, let's find out right now. Brok's story is obviously not your typical beaten up story. This is first and foremost a point-and-click game, so stories play a very big part in it. You are Brok, a former boxer-fighter who changed career after some events took place in his life and he decided to become an investigator. He lives in a controlled country with classes separated in cities where the rich live under a protective dome called the drums, and the poor live under the open sky dealing with pollution, garbage and toxic waste and lack of safety or perspective for the future in a part of the city called the slums. Brok is a slumber, living in a small apartment with his stepson Graf, who ended up with Brok after the passing of his mother Leah.
So tell me.
One day after waking up, Brok sees in his phone that one possible client is calling him insistently, and when calling him back, a desperate voice in need of help urgently demands his presence. After that, and a small tutorial, you are out on Brok's world to solve a small case that will eventually lead to a complicated plot that will change his world forever. The story, without giving any spoilers, is something else in this game. You will be invited to think about a lot of stuff that's currently going on in our world, like climate change, automation, AI, class struggles, and so on. All those topics are handled with mastery by the developer, not following the traditional cliches that topics like those usually bring. The developer did an amazing job keeping things interesting and fresh, jumping from one topic to another without ever losing the connection between the causes and effects of what is happening in the world right now. It's a very well-built world where you can easily understand what is what and why things are the way they are without having to read an entire wiki for that. For a point-and-click game, the story here is one of the best I ever followed, and although I didn't get yet all the 11 endings the game offers, the 3 I got were very different from each other, and one was particularly depressing, what I found very refreshing and, well, depressing.
What was that about?
For a beaten up, the story is fantastic, complex and rich. Sure, you must keep in mind this is a point-and-click game first, with beaten up mechanics, so you will have a lot to read before jumping to fights. But with a story so good and characters so alive, you won't mind the moments of story between your fights.
Truly sorry. I had some...
Talking about the audio, I have few to almost nothing to complain about here. Cowcat made only excellent choices when it comes to music and the voice actors. The music here has mostly a new age feel, with sobers and calm tunes that will make you relax while making decisions in this game. All sectors that you visit have their own track and they are all excellent. The fight moments have heavier tunes with electronic music more typical of beaten ups, taking the front seat with higher pitch notes and heavy drums accompany your brawls. The music here is really something special. That may not stick with you after you play the game, but surely will be a pleasant surprise for those looking for something little different than the conventions of this type of game.
Let's see. Hey, don't touch my jacket! Don't worry.
The same can be said about the voices. Every character here is voice acted and the actors are very, very good. Brok's voice, Brian Olson, does a fantastic job interpreting the character, giving the 200 kilos giant a lot of convincing emotions and feelings. Not only him, but all actors here were pretty well chosen by Cowcat, fitting perfectly to the appearance and personality of the characters. There's nothing to complain here, really. It's hard to review a game when everything is so well put together because there's not much to talk about except it's excellent. Unfortunately, the sound effects aren't that great. They aren't bad, not at all, but they are a little dry and without that oomph that you hear in some games. They are varied enough. You can hear the metal of the tribots when you punch them or the sound of wood being shattered when you punch a box, but I leave the game with this feeling that they didn't sound satisfying enough. Yes, I'm probably nitpicking the game here because this detail will never bring the game down, but if there's one thing that I think is not great in the game, it's the sound of your punches. They are just good. Brok is a hand-drawn game, and you can see the developer put a lot of hours and effort into bringing to life each and every scene. The amount of detail you will find here is astonishing, from Brok itself with his small band-aid on his nose, to the city landscape with flying cars zooming past the screen and heat effects distorting the horizon. The feeling of an old cartoon or comic book is everywhere in this game, and the art style is extremely charming. Sure, you won't have here too much flair and special effects to fill your screen with lights and explosions, and even the backgrounds, except for one or another scene, are mostly static, but being a hand-drawn game, made basically by one person, I completely understand the lack of moving parts and a populated city. But what it lacks in movement and life in the backgrounds is compensated by the incredible amount of static details you will find in any scene, which is expected since you will have to scout every scene for clues. Every place you go in this game is a feast to the eyes. Being a point-and-click game, this is expected since you will spend a lot of time looking at each screen, but Cowcat didn't spare efforts to make each scene, even the ones that look empty, filled with details that not only are important to give life to the scene, but also tells a lot of things about the world Brok is living. Animation is also pretty good if you know what to expect here. Brok isn't a game with fluid animations and hundreds of frames to each move he can perform. Actually, it's pretty much the opposite. The animation here is stiff, with few frames for each move, and it works so well within the game's theme and art style that I wouldn't want it any other way. It has that old cartoon feel with some janky movements and almost no transition from one pose to another. In most games it would be a problem, but here, thanks to the excellent and carefully thought style of the game, the animation seems perfect. In the end, Brok is a very good looking game, where all parts are in perfect harmony with each other. We all know for beaten up games that all of the above isn't important if the gameplay and combat aren't on point. For a point and click, it's almost the same except for the story, of course. But how does Brok mix those two aspects of the game? Well, first of all, you have your point and click mechanics. You use a controller, a mouse or mouse and keyboard to move Brok and interact with the world. The game is actually very well suited to gamepads, and moving the cursor with it is a breeze. You can highlight points of interest with X and select them with the D-pad, or move the cursor around the screen with the right analog stick. This makes scouting the scene very easy, and controller players won't find any trouble looking for clues. All your finds, clues, notes are easily displayed on the pause menu, being easily accessed at any time in the game. This makes handling items inside the many puzzles of the game very approachable, and you will be in no time moving, comparing and combining items with your controller. If you played any point and click before, there's nothing new here for you, except for the excellent use of the controller. The gameplay is your typical point and click affair. You walk through a scene and scout it for clues, so you can advance the story a little bit. As usual, you will face a lot of puzzles here, varying from the plain obvious to some that will make you question your intelligence or the developer's sanity. Some of the puzzles can be a little complex if you are not used to this type of game, but thankfully you can always count with some collectible ads that you find scattered through the game that can grant you tips to solve the more hairy puzzles you will find. For the purists, the game offers the option to turn this possibility off, but you will still have to find the ads if you want a 100% completion of the game. What is interesting here is that you can solve some of the puzzles brute forcing your way out of the problem, but as you can predict, this will bring a lot of headaches for you down the road. But nevertheless, the option of beating the heck out of a puzzle is something extremely satisfying to do, and it's giving you more trouble to solve it than you want. When it comes to the combat, what we have here is a little bit different from what we are used to from traditional beaten ups. First of all, the style of combat is totally old school. You start the game with your completely set of moves, there's nothing to learn here, and the only upgrades you will do when you level up are your health, strength and special move power. You have your punch, your jump, block, dodge, a run button, a desperation move and a special. Combining them will open up opportunities to a lot of different attacks, and although you don't have too much to work with here, what you are able to do can be pretty effective in the game. First, you have your base combo attack, with punches that can become a chain up to 5 strikes. You have your flying kick, which is perfect for aerial enemies and to start an attack, and you have a very strong uppercut that can be performed pressing attack and jump at the same time. If you press attack after the uppercut, you can perform a strike that launches your enemy right to the ground, give them a lot of reasons to want to stay there for some time. pressing run, then punch works as your strong attack, and if you press block after being knocked down, you'll make Brok stop the fall and counter the attacker with a light kick. Your desperation move is the typical for beat'em ups, where you will lose a little of energy performing it, but in exchange you release a powerful blow to your surroundings, and your special, which has its own bar that will be filled as you hit your enemies, will work as a clear screen attack, except when you have very strong enemies, of course. This is all you will have from start to finish, and this is enough to make a very fun and engaged combat in this game. But as I said before, things here are a little different for your more traditional beat'em up. The combat is very slow-paced and methodical. Enemies can give you a lot of damage even with the simplest of attacks, and they can take a lot of punishment before being killed. You have to think before each move because Brok telegraphs every punch and stays open for attack for quite a while, so if you don't anticipate your enemy's moves, your attacks will be promptly interrupted by the enemies and they rarely miss an opportunity like that. Add to that an interesting cast of enemies that, while they aren't very varied with just a few types of enemies, they are all very interesting to fight with. Giant rats, colored squealers, robots, drones, and even some NPCs that are part of story will be among your enemies. They all have unique fighting styles and some will give you a lot of headaches sometimes. You can also fight with Graf, Brok's stepson, from time to time. He's a cat and just a teenager and, as a result, he's way faster but weaker than Brok, playing more like a high-technique character with lots of speed and agility. He has a slide move that can easily knock your enemies and can jump over their heads, dealing a good amount of damage while avoiding being hit. Unfortunately, due to the story of the game, there are only few times where you can play with him, giving the feeling that he was a little underused in the game, but understandable when you look at how he's placed in the story. The AI of the enemies is generally good. They know how to evade your attacks and, as I mentioned before, they know how to take advantage of your mistakes. But if you are here mainly for the combat, the better option is to put the game on hard mode. Normal is pretty easy and the AI is very forgiving, making each fight pretty mundane. On hardcore, you will face a very mean set of enemies that can kill you with ease, and he will force you to use your block and dodge more than you expect in a beat'em up. You will find some weapons around your fighting grounds, some are brought by the enemies, but I found them to be pretty useless when compared to Brok's move. They are usually even slower than your regular moves and most of the time will let you open for attacks. The damage they provide is very good, but you will be lucky if you can finish a chain without being hit first. You can also find items to regain energy, improve your strength and reduce damage taken for a while. Those can be found in boxes dropped by enemies and can be used at any moment since most of them will be stored in your inventory after you pick them up. The game also offers a nice quick fight mode where you can play with Brok or Graf facing waves of random enemies each time you play. You can pick among 5 difficult levels and it's pretty fun to play for a while or to test and try some combo sequence or even study in a controlled environment how your enemies behave. In the end, for a point-and-click game, the combat here is extremely satisfying. It's surprising to see combat that isn't superficial in a game that isn't sold as a beat'em up. Even not being a traditional fast-paced combat with lots of combos and aerial moves, the combat is great and feels great with every punch you land and every hit you take. What you have here fits perfectly to the general theme of the game. The slowness of the characters added to the weight of their moves bodes well together with a giant croc, giant rat and human-sized robots. It's a very good surprise seeing other genres of game embracing beat'em up mechanics not only well but with enough creativity to make something unique and very satisfying to play. Brok the InvestiGator is far from a traditional beat'em up. The game is heavy on story and puzzles because this is primarily a point-and-click game. You will spend hours and hours here looking for clues, talking to suspects, solving family crises, and dealing with the consequences of a world on the brink of collapse. As a beat'em up, Brok does an excellent job with what it has to offer. The fights aren't that frequent, but when they happen they will be extremely satisfying and you will spend a good time during those fights to make up for it. If you like to exercise your brain as much as your fingers, Brok is a no-brainer. The story, graphics, puzzles are all very well made and everything is combined perfectly here. One of the great surprises of this year, Brok is a game that will stick with you long after you finish playing it. And a pure beat'em up in this world would be a very nice thing to see in the future. Just saying. That's it for the video, guys. I hope you enjoyed the review. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and I hope you guys have a great day. And remember, keep it the night.